He strikes me, and this is what I've always liked about him, is someone who's very comfortable in his own skin, who knows who he is. He doesn't care necessarily what, people think about him now.
I put my personal feelings aside. I'm professional about this, and I like him in a way that he reminds me of an American cowboy, like a John Wayne figure. He was cantankerous, tough, individualistic, stuck by his guns, and people like that in Bush. Then you can understand why we voted for him and what they like about him, and you understand basically the American mindset, which is not the British mindset, by the way. There's much more cowboy in America. I went to the same school. I went to Yale at class of 1968, and he was there, and I never met him there, but I know the type. But he was definitely from an entitled family, big name. So he was not my kind of friend, but I left to go to Vietnam. I met him years later when he was governor of Texas, and I really was struck by his confidence and his cockiness.
What they liked about George Bush is he spoke to them. He may have mangled his English a little bit, but that's what they liked about him, was the fact that he could speak to them sort of in a straight, like a Texan. What you got from George Bush, whether you liked it or not, you got straight up from George Bush. And that's what they liked about him in the early days, and I think that's why actually they elected him.
Charlie, we're here outside Buckingham Palace because that's where people gathered, Americans, Brits, when 9/11 happened. This event, basically, his whole presidency is going to be judged by this event, isn't it? And his reaction to it.
Oh, very much. Whether he wanted it or not, this is the defining moment of his presidency. It set the agenda for the next 8 years. I'm interested in the speech he gave that night, or the speech he gave to the United Nations days later, when the Bush doctrine, as it were, was set in stone, and the security response was set in stone, of saying, listen, we are not going to just sit by idly while democracy itself is attacked.
I think he rose to the challenge of 9/11 politically, but not morally. I think he immediately divided the electorate with notions of us against them, evildoers. The concept of you're either with us or you're against us was a divisive concept. If he had said, look, we have a problem with the Taliban in Afghanistan because they're harboring al-Qaeda, I think most people in the world would have gone along with it. When he expanded the reach of it to include Iraq, and he called the axis of evil Iran, and he included North Korea, and then belligerent statements like these, I think he turned a large part of the American people off. Only in America could you promote another war. I mean, what is this love of war? This is what I don't understand about my country. I've been to war, I've seen war. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's the end of all civilization as we know it. Why would you constantly be declaring war?
Don't attack! Don't attack Iraq!
Millions of people marched against the war in Iraq. Some people suggest that was a war George W. Bush was always going to fight if he became president. Never mind what.
Actually, the truth of the matter, the fact is quite different. People forget we were at war with this man going back to the first Gulf War in 1991. And what do you expect someone, again, who is in charge of 300 million lives to do? Just sit back and say, well, I don't know, let's chance it and see, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. The case was made, and Bush was actually courageous enough to rise to the bar and say, I have to act.
He thinks in the long term that he will be justified by history, that his Middle East shakeup will work, that it will have changed the playing field, that he will be regarded somewhat like Harry Truman, who he regards as a hero, that he will be resurrected by history. I think he believes that.
He took what was put in front of him, 9/11, securing our borders and our freedoms, and he met the challenge that he was given.